Welcome to Life Lessons from Dog. I'm Kari Solberg. For over 12 years, I've been immersed in the world of dogs, with 10 of those years being dedicated to professional training. My journey has taken me from fostering rescue dogs to owning and operating a boarding, training, and daycare facility. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of it, it's that some of the most important lessons in life aren't taught, they're felt. A lot of what I do today, the way I train and the way I work with dogs, didn't come from blindly following what I was taught. It came from questioning the process, from realizing that just because something worked didn't mean it was the best way, and from learning, sometimes the hard way, that trusting yourself is just as important as learning from others. That realization first hit me years ago at the Training Caesar's Way workshop in California. At the time, I didn't recognize it as a defining moment. I just knew I walked away feeling frustrated. But looking back now, I see it for what it was. The first time I trusted my gut over someone else's expertise. And while that moment planted a seed, it would take many more experiences before I fully trusted myself. At the Training Caesar's Way workshop, we were split into small groups, each led by an assistant trainer. Throughout the workshop, we would break into our groups and rotate through different exercises, things like teaching dogs to swim, running alongside a bike, and working through agility courses. Buddy was nervous in all of them, but the agility equipment, that was next level terrifying. The balance beam was especially hard, more so because of its proximity to a noisy and high-traffic gate. Buddy wasn't even with me. Physically, yes, but mentally, he was locked on the gate behind us, hyper-fixated on the sound of it opening and closing, and the big, scary humans coming through it. No matter what I tried, he was stuck, muscles tense, brain somewhere else completely. Noticing us struggling, our assistant trainer came over to help. And because I wanted to trust the process, because I was at this workshop to learn, I handed over the leash. What followed, well, it wasn't great. Buddy spiraled deeper and deeper into insecurity with each correction. He wasn't learning. He was shutting down. And I just stood there. I felt like I was battling two voices in my head. One telling me to advocate for Buddy, the other telling me to trust the process. Was I just being overly emotional? Was I the problem? The trainer told me to let her continue, that I needed to let Buddy work through it. But I knew in my gut that it wasn't working. And finally, tears streaming down my face, I stepped in. I stopped the exercise and took the leash back. I walked away mad, more at myself than anything else. Not because I had stepped in, but because I hadn't done it sooner. I had let Buddy struggle longer than he needed to because I assumed the professional knew better. That feeling stuck with me and still, today, sticks with me. And looking back, it wasn't just about Buddy. It was about me realizing for the first time that trusting myself wasn't something I should do. It was something that I had to do. It wasn't like I left that workshop a new person, suddenly free of self-doubt. I still second-guessed myself, but something had shifted. When I got home, I started working with dogs in a more intuitive way. I didn't have a structured method or a name for what I was doing. I just did what felt right. And the results, well, they spoke for themselves. The dogs responded better and the changes stuck. And for the first time, I started seeing my own approach take shape. But still, I doubted myself. So, ever the imposter syndrome sufferer, I went looking for external validation. I followed popular trainers on social media and attended workshops across the country, hoping to find that thing that was missing. Instead, everything they were teaching, I was already intuitively doing. And that was my first hint that maybe I already had the answers. But I still had cases that I felt could have gone better. Cases like CB, where I wrestled with the outcome of behavioral euthanasia. Or Sun and Moon, 2 Thai meat trade dogs so deeply traumatized that traditional training methods didn't even scratch the surface of what they needed. So, a few years later, I attended a highly lauded workshop on behavior modification, something that was supposed to be the gold standard of the industry. But within the first few hours of instruction, I knew it was a waste of my time. The information that they were covering was so basic that I couldn't justify staying around for the full weekend. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't here to learn anymore. I was at the point where I could be teaching professionals. That realization gave me the push I needed to fully commit to my own methods, to refine them, to put language around them, and to trust that I wasn't just making it up and that I had built something solid and something very real. Since then, I've learned something that's completely changed the way I navigate life. Some of the biggest breakthroughs don't come from following a set formula. They don't come from doing what's expected or following what's worked for someone else. They come from listening to that quiet, internal voice, the one that tells you when something isn't right, even when you can't explain why. Because here's the thing, experience is valuable, but so is intuition. We're taught to rely on external knowledge, on what experts say, what the books tell us, and what the data supports. And yeah, there's value in that. Learning from those who have walked the path before us can be powerful. It can provide insight, structure, and confidence in our choices. But at the end of the day, we are the ones who have to live with the decisions we make. And this doesn't just apply to dog training. How many times have you doubted yourself in other areas of life? Staying in a job that didn't feel right because it was the smart thing to do? Sensing something was off in a relationship but ignoring it because you didn't have proof? Knowing exactly what you wanted but second-guessing yourself because someone else's voice was louder? We do this all the time. We trade our intuition for certainty. We choose what feels safe over what feels right. But here's what I've learned. Certainty doesn't always mean truth. You can have all the information in the world, all the advice, all the opinions, and still, no one else knows your life, your path, and your next step better than you do. Trusting your gut isn't about being reckless. It's not about dismissing wisdom or experience. It's about recognizing that your experience, your instincts, your inner knowing hold value too. Because sometimes breaking the mold, trusting yourself over the noise of outside opinions, is exactly what leads to the best outcomes. And the more you practice listening to that voice, the clearer it becomes. So this week, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, where in your life are you ignoring what your gut is telling you? Is it a decision you keep pushing off? A conversation you're avoiding? A path you already know you want to take but keep waiting for someone else to validate? What would happen if you stopped second-guessing yourself and just trusted that you already know more than you think? Because trusting yourself isn't about always having the right answers. It's about believing that even if you don't, you'll figure it out. And if you do that, if you lean into trust, you might just be surprised where it leads you. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. You can also connect with me on Substack at lifelessonsfromdog.substack.com and on Blue Sky and TikTok at Life Lessons from Dog, where I share more reflections, behind-the-scenes moments, and lessons from the dogs who continue to teach me every day. And if you know someone who might need to hear this today, someone who's been second-guessing themselves, stuck in indecision, or looking for external validation, consider sharing this episode with them. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of trusting yourself to change everything. Next time on Life Lessons from Dog. When I first set out to grow my business, I did what most of us do. I looked to the experts, followed the models of success that had already been built, and for a while, it worked. But something felt off. I wasn't seeing the results I knew I was capable of. And more importantly, I wasn't fully showing up as myself. So I made a shift. I stopped trying to fit into a mold and started leaning into what made me, me. And almost immediately, everything changed. The dogs I worked with responded better, and the right clients started showing up. A real community started forming, one that didn't just support my business, but felt like home. In the next episode, I'm talking about what happens when we stop trying to fit in and start embracing what makes us unique. Because as I've learned from dogs, the best way to find your people is to show up as exactly who you are. I'll see you next time on Life Lessons from Dog.